Tonight, May Day, new Biden poll numbers in swing states set up alarms inside the White House. Bill O'Reilly on the danger of Trump getting a little too confident. Tough slog. Israel fights Hamas street by street, alley by alley. Why time is now on the terrorist side. And yes, supersize me.
It's the first day, and I'm on my way to breakfast. Could I get an Egg McMuffin extra value meal?
How America is getting the last laugh in the war against fast food. Welcome to the fairest show on television this Monday evening. We're glad to have you along. Whether you like Donald Trump or you hate Donald Trump, Michael Cohen did not disappoint. Donald Trump in court came face to face with his old attorney, his fixer, Michael Cohen. Inside court, Trump refused to even look at the man who was side by side with him for so many years, did so much of Donald Trump's dirty work. For the first time in the trial, Cohen linked Trump to allegedly illegal activities. And that's important because for the first time today, after nearly 20 days of trial, we got the link that prosecutors have promised is there of Donald Trump to all of these activities that prosecutors want to prove is illegal. From closed-door meetings with the former president to detailed conversations with Trump's chief financial officer, discussions about how to buy Stormy Daniels' story of her 2006 affair with Trump, all of the details. Many of Cohen's claims today, to be fair, aligned with his previous testimony on Capitol Hill in 2019.
Do you have any proof of this direction?
Just the payment, sir.
So no email?
Mr. Trump doesn't have email.
So no recording?
I do not have recordings, no.
No text message?
Mr. Trump doesn't text message.
So no direction other than your testimony today that that's what the payment was for?
And the fact that I paid on his behalf, at his direction, the money to Keith Davidson's IOLA account. You're right, there's no other documentation I have.
All right, so that was 2019 testimony, and it was problematic for Cohen even back then. Obviously, there's no cameras in the courtroom today, so there's no receipts, as Cohen admitted. He testified that everything ran through Donald Trump and that the former president directed him to catch and kill Daniel's story, to buy her silence, and that Donald Trump promised to reimburse him for it later. It's very difficult to prove that that is a crime. It's sleazy, but on its face, it's not a crime. Here's where prosecutors are going to try and make it a crime. Because they want Cohen to prove to the jury that this was all done solely to protect the Trump presidential campaign. They have to prove that this had everything to do with Trump's campaign and not anything to do with Melania Trump. Cohen testified about a conversation he allegedly had with Trump before he announced his run for office. Cohen says Trump told him, quote, "You know when this comes out," meaning the announcement, "just be prepared. There's going to be a lot of women coming forward." Nobody really probably doubts that was said, to be fair. Jurors also heard a secret recording of Trump that first aired 6 years ago on CNN.
Need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding.
Today is the very best the prosecution will get. Meaning that what you heard from Michael Cohen today, what the prosecutors were able to have him explain to the jury, is the high watermark. Because the cross-examination of Michael Cohen is going to be brutal. The prosecution's star witness spent 13 months behind bars. He evaded taxes, he lied to a bank, he lied to Congress, he made excessive campaign contributions and unlawful corporate contributions. And he's an admitted liar. Here to discuss, New York City criminal defense attorney Michael DeSharo and Jimena Bustillo, an NPR politics reporter who was in court today. Thank you both for being here. Michael, you've been talking about today since the day of this indictment. Let's just take Michael Cohen, which is hard to do, at his word. Everything he said today is true in this experiment, in this hypothetical. Did it prove Donald Trump committed a crime?
No, because he paid this money at the direction of Donald Trump. The money was authorized by Donald Trump. The money was signed off on Donald Trump. Paying the money, the hush, everybody likes to call it the hush money trial because it's so sexy. But paying that money itself was not illegal. So what was Mr. Trump's intent in paying this money? This is where Michael Cohen needs to take us. And he's not taking us there. And if he tries, it's going to be based on his credibility. Michael Cohen is walking reasonable doubt.
Jimena, have we figured out how the prosecution is going to get around this major problem? Did we get any insight today into getting around the fact that their star witness is an admitted perjurer and felon?
So we have barely made it to January 2016 in testimony. So we're expecting that tomorrow, an entire second day of testimony, will bring some of those questions, and that the prosecutors will likely ask Cohen about his criminal past, particularly when it comes to those perjury charges. That is not something that the prosecution has tried to hide or sugarcoat, and they've gotten in front of it by making Cohen one of the last witnesses to testify, but still also not the last one to tie a bow on their case.
Yeah, fair enough. And obviously, so day two of the direct examination, then you get to the cross. Jimena, just take us inside the courtroom real quick. Give us the body language. Michael Cohen walks in, Donald Trump walks in. Who was sitting, who was standing? Was there glares exchanged? What was it like?
This was a very particular circumstance because this is the second time that Cohen is testifying against his former boss, someone that he claims to have wanted to protect, someone he himself has called boss before, and really put a lot on the line for him. Now, Cohen is sitting in the witness stand. I think I mentioned this before with Stormy Daniels. There seems to be something blocking those who are sitting in the witness stand from seeing the former president, because when asked to identify them in the courtroom, they kind of look up and over, and I think Cohen even stood up to try and find Trump into the crowd. But Trump really didn't make a lot of eye contact. Now, last week during various testimony, not only Daniels, but some of his former employees, he was leaned over the table. He was actively paying attention. Today, he was more slouched back. His tie kind of fell to the side. At times, he seemed to be reading some papers. He wasn't as attentive watching the testimony as he was last week.
Michael, I've watched an awful lot of Law & Order episodes and covered a few trials myself. How is it that the witness can't see the defendant?
I mean, he doesn't want to. Michael Cohen, to be in that courtroom and to be Michael Cohen staring at Donald Trump and having to make the kind of testimony that he has is extremely difficult. And it's very awkward. And I'm sure Trump has been told by his attorneys, don't smirk at him, don't do anything, because then the prosecution will bring it up. The other issue is that after the end of this case, there's going to be a motion to dismiss by the defense. That happens at the end of all criminal cases. I don't think at this point this judge has the ability, is going to not grant this. I don't think the people have proved a crime.
Wow. All right, so that would be huge, right? Especially considering what Donald Trump's been saying about the judge here. I think what's really interesting, right, is you made a great point. He didn't smirk at Michael Cohen. He didn't smile. He didn't try to intimidate him or anything like that. Not only that, he didn't talk about Michael Cohen. And this is somebody who Donald Trump has had some very choice words for in the past. Today after court, he didn't say Michael Cohen's name. Take a listen.
He's a corrupt judge, and he's a conflicted judge, and he ought to let us go out and campaign and get rid of this scam. Every single legal analyst, even CNN, even MSDNC, they're saying there's no case here.
Okay, put aside the bluster of Donald Trump there, Michael. This is a man, now a defendant who is abiding by the judge's order in the gag order and probably by his lawyer's advice, right?
I think so. He's holding himself together to try to get past this, because I think after Michael Cohen, we have one more witness. The cross-examination, it's difficult for me to explain to people who haven't done this job the cross-examination of Michael Cohen, how deep it's going to be, because you have so many areas of lying to go into. It is extremely rare to have a convicted perjurer on the stand. Let me be clear. There is no way in the prosecution's mind they would ever want to call Michael Cohen to the stand, but they have to. They have to rely on him. And you have to, at a certain point, I was having a very deep discussion with one of the most prominent criminal defense lawyers in the country. And he's talking about the case. And I said, at a certain point, you have to believe something. The jury has to believe something that Michael Cohen says. I don't care how much let's say he contributes 5% to the case. They have to believe him. And with those two jurors that are attorneys, it's going to be a hell of a cross-examination.
One of the things about this, and I think rightfully has been asked, is about the credibility of two witnesses, right? Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. Karen McDougal has not played a large role. That's the former Playboy playmate. Over the weekend, Bill Maher, his researchers uncovered a clip of Stormy Daniels that appears to contradict, maybe the best way to say it, her testimony under oath. Take a listen.
I mean, I wasn't assaulted. I wasn't attacked or raped or coerced or blackmailed. They tried to shove me in the Me Too box to further their own agenda. And first of all, I didn't want any part of that because it's not the truth, and I'm not a victim in that regard.
That's not what she's saying now. She's talking about he was bigger and blocking the way. It's all the Me Too buzzwords.
Jimena, a lot was made of the Trump team cross-examination. Do you see the clip of Stormy Daniels the same way Bill Maher does, that it was contradictory to what she said in court?
I mean, ultimately, Daniels mainly focused on two things on that subject. First, she said that there are different details in a book because the editor, the publisher, wanted her to straight up call it something that it wasn't, something along the lines of assault, and she didn't want to go there. The second thing that she talked about is that she wasn't drugged, she wasn't drunk, and she wasn't physically intimidated in that way. She wasn't physically attacked. And I think that that is similar to what the clip from Bill Maher played. Like the judge said, it seems like there are additional details coming into court. Some of those are thrown out because the defense team objected and those were sustained.
Fascinating. Well, that's why we have somebody who was in the courtroom. Jimena, thank you very much. Michael, as always, we appreciate your time. We'll see y'all back here, same place, same time tomorrow night. And for all of the talk about Donald Trump's troubles and the talk about this trial, he's on trial. He drew huge crowds in the blue state of New Jersey this weekend. Huge. And he's up in every swing state but one. By all accounts, his campaign is going great. Bill O'Reilly on why sitting pretty may be a very dangerous place for Donald Trump, and why shaming people into eating healthy doesn't work. 20 years after Super Size Me, the forces of do-gooders in America keep getting it wrong.
Should people eat fast food?
No. You know this. The answer is no.
It certainly needs to be very restricted and balanced with overall a healthy diet and overall a lot of exercise.
And there's no reason whatsoever why fast food has to be so disgusting.
For a guy on trial, Donald Trump is doing pretty well. Fewer Americans, according to a recent poll, believe he's even going to be convicted. That's among Democrats, Republicans, and independents. So everybody, even CNN hosts, now say the New York case is political.
And the trials against him keep him in the spotlight, infuriate his base, who sees him as a martyr, and even may serve to make him the object of some sympathy among people in general who believe that his prosecutors are politically motivated. This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump.
A New York Times Siena College poll shows Biden trailing in all but one swing state. More great news, right, for Donald Trump. Biden's up 2 in Wisconsin, and then it is all red. Pennsylvania, Trump +3. Arizona, Trump +7. Michigan, Trump +7. Georgia, Trump +10. Nevada, Trump +12. Bill O'Reilly is here, host of the No Spin News, author of Confronting the President's No Spin Assessments from Washington to Biden. Mr. O'Reilly wrote on his excellent page, BillO'Reilly.com, and I am going to get it right here. One danger, however, this kind of rally turnout, meaning New Jersey, tends to embolden Mr. Trump. Not sure he needs to be more bold. There is a danger, perhaps, right, in Donald Trump becoming emboldened.
Sure. Anybody overconfident in any kind of a crucial situation is going to take a fall. So I think Trump himself was surprised that 100,000 human beings showed up in Wildwood, New Jersey on a cold Saturday night to stand there for 3 hours to hear him speak. There's only one other human being in the country that might be able to do that, and that's Taylor Swift. Think about it. There's no other person in the United States of America who could get that kind of a crowd to go out there. That tells us two things. Number one, his supporters are becoming even more enthusiastic. And number two, he's winning over some people in the middle who may not be totally sold on him, but believe that this New York City travesty, which it is not American, unfair, politically driven, whatever description you want to use, they now believe that. And Americans inherently, Leland, from the very beginning, don't like authority treating other people unfairly. That you can just trace history back. The folks, even if it's a powerful guy, they want some kind of fairness in our system. And if you think that Donald Trump's being treated fairly, then you're living in the land of Oz.
Well, somehow we've gotten you and Fareed Zakaria to agree on something, which 2024, that was not on my 2024 bingo card. You said the only person in America is Taylor Swift and Donald Trump. Did you put an asterisk in America because you were leaving out the Pope? I don't even know if the Pope could get 100,000 people to come out right now.
Not today. Not in this country. Maybe in an African country where Catholicism is thriving. But here we got about 22% of Catholics going to Mass every Sunday. So, but the point of the matter is, and all the pinheady legal analysis that you're going to hear ad nauseum until this trial is over, which will be in about 10 days, doesn't mean anything, Leland. Nothing. The only thing that means something are the 12 human beings in that jury box. And I put myself in that jury, okay? And I'm looking at Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen. These are the lowest. And this is what the case is based on? These people, a lawyer who tapes his own client without the client's knowledge? A woman who goes on a television show and says, hey, this was all consensual, and then testifies under oath that she was intimidated? Come on.
Yeah,
when that is what the prosecution has. Right. The jury is going to personally recoil from that.
Okay. I guess the only thing that could be better than Donald Trump being on trial and everybody thinking it's unfair is Donald Trump is either acquitted or there's a hung jury, in which case he walks out of the courthouse and declares victory and says even a New York jury said that this was politically motivated. And what could be better for Donald Trump at that point?
Well, you open with a quote from my message of the day on BillO'Reilly.com, which was a warning to the Donald Trump organization. And the warning is, don't put him on the stand. Do not put him on the stand under oath in that courtroom, because he's liable to say anything. And even after court, when he goes out, he should be bringing a methodical discipline. Yes, a sense of outrage, absolutely. Okay, he's got to prove to the American public that he's not a machine, that he's not a villain. Okay, and a lot of people think he is one. But you put him on the stand, and that could make, depending on how he conducts himself, but I don't think that'll ever happen. I mean, if I was his attorney, I'd bring flex cuffs in and just cuff him to the chair. You're not going up there.
Yeah, well, right. Okay, obviously. But, you know, it's interesting. I don't think anybody has to tell Donald Trump to be outraged, right? After court, he's been outraged every day. What's interesting to me, and we played this in the previous segment, is that he was disciplined, right? He didn't go after Michael Cohen. He obeyed by the gag order. That said, it's one thing to discipline Donald Trump for a couple of days, and we've seen that happen in the past when, for one reason or another, he decides to get on message. But he's impossible to control for 6 months. We've seen that. Every story, oh, this is the new disciplined Trump, it blows up in 3 or 4 days. To your point, if he's running 5-6 points ahead right now and going into the summer and he decides he's just going to start freelancing, undisciplined Trump out on the stump, forget the stand, that's what Joe Biden wants, right?
No, it won't matter. It won't matter. No matter what Donald Trump says in a political setting, and if you listen to his diatribe on Saturday night, I mean, it was beyond the pale. It doesn't matter. Because people are numb to it, Leland. They're numb to it, all right? He's entertaining to the people who like him. I mean, it's like The Apprentice 8. He's up there just blasting people. But the real advantage Donald Trump has is that the Biden presidency is blowing up before our eyes. What happened on Sunday with Blinken going out and basically saying, we're not going to support Israel, when in October Blinken said 180 degrees opposite. I'm going to give a little plug. I'm going to have Leland on my program, the No Spin News, tomorrow. And the reason I wanted Vittert on the program is because he covered Gaza, Israel, the whole thing. And I don't think that most Americans understand what is happening over there. But Leland does, and I will pull it out of him tomorrow. And when I saw Blinken do that yesterday, my head snapped back. Because, again, Biden's playing to his far, far left. The polls say the majority of people stand with Israel. You can advise them, and you should, to be as humanitarian as you can be in the middle of a war, okay? But to just say to Israel, they're a bunch of war criminals, I'm telling you, Leland, the basic person at home is going, Biden stands for nothing. He's got no principles. He's a disaster, technically, with inflation and the border and everything else. I mean, just get into the fentanyl. Do this tomorrow night. All right. Fentanyl importation in 2 years. Fentanyl importation in 2 years up 900%. 900% across that open border. That one fact alone should disqualify Joe Biden from any second term. So that's what Trump has, a melting down president. And he should exploit that and stay out of crazy land. But as you point out, that's easier said than done for Donald Trump.
All right. Easier said than done, fair enough. In terms of melting down, right, for the Joe Biden presidency, we understand how you feel about that. You've been around for a long time. You were not around the last time we had a president and a former president going up against each other. In modern times, it hasn't happened. Doesn't this really come down to who this is a referendum about, of two highly unpopular men? If it's a referendum about Donald Trump mean tweets and crazy things on the stump, okay, then Joe Biden's going to win. If it's a referendum on all the things about Joe Biden you've said, then Donald Trump's going to win. And I'm going to tee you up to go after your favorite group around, which is the media. They will make it to the best of their abilities, and we were already seeing this, a la CNN and Dana Bash over the weekend, a referendum on Donald Trump.
Sure, because that's how Biden won in 20. Biden stayed away and just said, you want him? Take him. You don't want him? Vote for me. Biden can't do that anymore, which is why the corporate media is melting down. They know this show trial in New York City is bad for Biden. They know that Biden's equivocation and not backing Israel is bad. They know the high prices in America, the open border, Biden's befuddlement on everything. The man does not work. If you look at his daily schedule, and I give it every day, on the No Spin News. He doesn't work. You know what he did today? He had a reception for Native Hawaiians and South Pacific people. That's it. That's all he had on his official schedule. And that's what it is every day. So Americans understand this. So it isn't a referendum about Trump any longer. It's a comparison now between what Trump delivered and what Biden delivered. That's the big difference.
Well, you have perfectly teed up and teased the next segment that is coming up. Bill, I will see you tomorrow. The tables will turn. I will study relentlessly this evening, sir. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I will. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's going to be a late night. The coffee's already coming out. All right. Split screens, right, over the weekend. And this is what Bill was talking about. Trump on trial. What does that mean to young voters and Americans struggling to put food on the table? If the White House doesn't change their approach by Memorial Day, is all lost. The White House's plan to win the split screen when we come back. This weekend gave us a split screen of the next 6 months, right? President Biden held private fundraisers and small events versus Donald Trump headlining big rallies. Donald Trump talking to the press, Joe Biden not. Alex Thompson, national political correspondent at Axios, is with us. Good to see you, my friend. The best source man inside a White House that doesn't leak or tries not to. Is this strategy, not tactics, by the White House out of necessity because Joe Biden can't do big events and big rallies and people won't come, or by choice because they think that Joe Biden out of the news and Donald Trump in the news is good for them?
I'd say, why can't it be both? I also think that you've seen the White House very intentionally make their events even smaller than they were. And, Joe Biden never brought in sort of the rally crowds that Donald Trump is. That's never been his style. Back in 2020, even before COVID hit, that was not his style. But they've been making them smaller, in part because every single event Biden was doing for months has been disrupted by pro-Palestine protesters. So what they're doing is they're trying to vet more people. They're trying to make them smaller, try to maybe get in a little bit of news, and then get out.
All right. So at least so far, that strategy is not proving fruitful in the battleground states, right? We put up this with Bill O'Reilly. Biden +2 in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Trump up in Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada. This is how CNN described this New York Times poll. Take a listen.
These Sunbelt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004.
I get the everything's fine image publicly. Mm-hmm. At what point does the campaign or the White House tell you, okay, now we're going to start worrying and pay attention?
Well, that moment could have come 6 months ago when basically we had polling from the New York Times that basically showed the exact same thing they're showing now. I mean, really the striking part about this poll is how little things have changed. In the last 6 months, you've seen Trump go on trial. You've seen the Joe Biden campaign spend about $45–60 million on television in these swing states. And yet the numbers are not moving. Democrats, from David Axelrod publicly, but lots of Democrats have been privately telling the Biden campaign, hey, show some more urgency. And you're seeing, they're hiring more. But in terms of change of strategy, you have not seen that. The Biden campaign is very confident that eventually this will come back.
So a big part of the argument in 2020 was no mean tweets, Trump lies, Trump's terrible, we're Joe Biden, Mr. Delaware everyday man who's going to tell the truth. You had a scoop this morning that I thought was really poignant in terms of that issue looking forward, right? Because now we've seen what Joe Biden does for 4 years in office, which is sort of like every other politician. Jen Psaki, meaning the former White House press secretary's new book, falsely recounts Biden's watch check in troop ceremony. After you wrote the piece, not before, Jen Psaki has now admitted that she misremembered the watch moment and is now going to rewrite part of her book. Why, in a time that this White House needs every ounce of credibility it has and has been so disciplined for so long, do you think something like this could have slipped through?
Well, it didn't slip through. This is one of the worst moments of Biden's presidency. And it's not Jen Psaki only. I mean, John Kirby went to the White House podium just a year ago and said that he didn't see chaos at the airport in Kabul when the XD saw, U.S. servicemen, running an organized process. The Biden administration has been trying to downplay Afghanistan. And the reason is very simple. Joe Biden's poll numbers have never, ever recovered since Afghanistan. Since then, more Americans have consistently disapproved of him than approved. They've never been able to change it since then.
It's a great point. That was the death cross, right? That was the
100%.
moment that all happened. Hey, Alex, we'll keep following your reporting. Awesome to see you as always, my friend. Thank you. Another big issue, obviously, for Joe Biden is Israel. Israel keeps telling President Biden to pound sand. How could America ever lead the world again when we come back? About destroying Israel, but desperate times and terrible poll numbers call for desperate measures. Here's Secretary of State Antony Blinken this weekend.
As we look at Rafah, they may go in and have some initial success, but potentially at an incredibly high cost to civilians, but one that is not durable. They will be left holding the bag on an enduring insurgency because a lot of armed Hamas will be left, no matter what they do in Rafah. Or if they leave and get out of Gaza, as we believe they need to do, then you're going to have a vacuum, and a vacuum that's likely to be filled by chaos, by anarchy, and ultimately by Hamas again.
In other words, Israel shouldn't go into Rafah because Hamas will control Rafah after Israel leaves Rafah, which sounds really smart until you realize Hamas controls Rafah right now. It's also where Hamas holds the remaining hostages, including 5 Americans. And you don't hear much about the 5 Americans anymore or about increased attacks by Hamas on the Israeli military. None of that gets covered either. All we hear is about just how evil Israel is. Even the New York Times admits the mass protests have emboldened Hamas. Israel and U.S. intelligence officers say to the New York Times that Hamas's strategy is to keep the war going for as long as it takes to shred Israel's reputation internationally and to damage its relationship with its primary ally, the United States. Guess what? Hamas's strategy is working, probably even working better than Hamas hoped. However, Israel has a little bit of a say in this, and they're going it alone. They don't really have a choice. Israel has to go it alone. They often have. President Biden is abandoning Israel for his domestic political audience, but there's a far bigger risk here, not in terms of Israel, but the world. And the world now realizes President Biden can't or won't enforce his will around the world. Enemies don't fear us and allies don't trust us. Here's the UK Prime Minister warning today about that threat.
The dangers that threaten our country are real. They're increasing in number. An axis of authoritarian states like Russia, Iran, North Korea and China is working together to undermine us and our values. War has returned to Europe, with our NATO allies warning that if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, they might be next.
Dmitry Oparovich is here, co-founder and executive chairman, Silverado Policy Accelerator. New book, World on the Brink, How America Can Beat China in the Race for the 21st Century. Welcome. On set himself. It is good to see you, my friend. Congrats on the book. Huge, well-written, and well thought out. The warning from the British Prime Minister seems to leave a world where America's leadership is now not what it has been for the past 30 years.
Yeah, for sure. And when you look at the Israeli situation, there's no way that Israel doesn't go into Gaza, right? Sinwar is there. He is the bin Laden for Israel. We went into Pakistan to get bin Laden. He's in Rafah. They're going to go and get him. And the Ukrainians are ignoring Americans when they tell them not to attack refineries in Russia because they know that they have to hit Russia in order to have a successful possibility, at least, of victory. So the reality is that Americans can tell, Israel can tell Ukraine not to fight back. They're not going to listen. This is existential.
All right, so at every point, as America takes a step back, metaphorically, right, and the world stops listening to America, does that put us one step closer to a world on the brink?
I think so. And, as I write in this book, the real threat here is China. They're the one superpower that can take us into conflict, potentially nuclear conflict, and we have to avoid it at all costs. I believe as soon as 4 years from now, they may go after Taiwan. And Taiwan is existential to our interests, not just because the semiconductors are there, but because it's the linchpin of U.S. strategy for Asia. If China dominates Taiwan, they kick us out of Asia. That's 50% of the world's GDP in that region, most of the supply chains, most of the growth. Dominating East Asia leads to domination across the world.
Okay. China's watching all this. It seems as though they're at least fermenting it a little bit by how they're helping Iran and emboldening Iran, giving Iran cover. What is the prescription if it is something other than America retaking its leadership role?
Well, I think we have to show leadership and show strength, first and foremost. Peace through strength. We don't want war, but we have to deter war. And when it comes to particularly China, we have to make sure that Xi Jinping wakes up every single day and says, today is not the day. That means military strength. That means economic strength.
But it also means resolve, right? And the one thing that America has not shown over the past few years is resolve. We've shown that our whole goal is non-escalation, not keeping our enemies from doing bad things. Those are different things. Xi Jinping sees that.
He absolutely does. He sees that we're waffling on Ukraine. He sees that we're waffling in Israel. He's asking himself, are they going to protect Taiwan? And the Taiwanese are asking that too, because if...
Why should they think the answer is anything but no?
Well, I think that's a very valid point. But our interests are at stake in Taiwan like nowhere else, because Asia matters. And Asia matters to America, and Asia matters to the world, and it matters to American prosperity. If we want to have this century be an American century, Taiwan cannot fall to China.
Oh. There's been very few countries that have been able to string together in world history 2 centuries, right?
Almost none.
Almost none. And we have how long to decide whether we're going to do that?
I think this can happen as soon as 4 years from now, maybe 8 at the utmost, but we have to move now. We don't have much time, because to deter China, we have to act on the economic front. We have to make sure that they don't have economic leverage over us, and we have to increase our leverage over them.
I would like to announce there's been a new moment in book salesmanship, okay, which is the lapel pin. Never before have we seen a lapel pin with the book cover on it there. Congratulations.
Thank you,
it's been a long time in the coming, my friend. Good to see you. World on the Brink. Worth ordering. You can look it up on Amazon. Also a link to it on War Notes today. 20 years ago, a documentary tried to expose McDonald's, how the left lost one of the culture war's supersized battles.
I got my egg McMuffin. That's going to be the first thing right there.
Turns out Americans don't like being told what to do. The consumer, some out of necessity, others by choice, won the food wars. 20 years ago this month, some very well-meaning folks warned us about McDonald's. And to do that, they had a documentary filmed. And they ate at McDonald's, and only McDonald's, for 30 days straight.
It's the first day, and I'm on my way to breakfast. Could I get an Egg McMuffin extra value meal? I woke up, couldn't breathe, was having really difficulty breathing. I'm very hot, and felt like I was having heart palpitations.
All right, so day 1 of eating McDonald's, and then he woke up day 21 with heart palpitations. And that was it. The documentary, Supersized Me, opened to critical acclaim. It was going to end McDonald's. And from today's New York Times, Fast Food Forever, how McHaters lost the culture war. Supersize Me led a backlash against McDonald's. 20 years on, the industry is bigger than ever. At this point, I could talk endlessly about Chick-fil-A. That is Chick-fil-A, and number 1. That's a culture war that the New York Times is truly triggered by. But for this, we'll stick to McDonald's. At least I get hungry and talk about Chick-fil-A. Since the movie, McDonald's stock is up tenfold, from $27 in 2004 to $275 today. That's 5 times better than the stock market as a whole. The movie made the case against McDonald's based on health rather than economics.
I knew if I was going to do this, I would need some serious medical supervision.
Your blood tests are excellent. The other thing that we looked at were all your electrolytes in terms of the salt in your blood, your kidney function, your liver function. They were all perfect.
All right, so Spurlock gained 25 pounds in a month. They didn't talk about how eating cheap food's bad for you. They talked about how eating unhealthy food is bad for you. And it was on point back in early 2000s. That's when everybody started talking about obesity, the obesity epidemic in America. Back then, 32% of Americans were obese. Now that is 42%. Doesn't look like that on the graph, but it is a huge increase. Severe obesity has doubled. So with that in mind, one can only imagine what the opening to Super Size Me, the sequel, will look like.
America has now become the fattest nation in the world. Congratulations. Nearly 100 million Americans are today either overweight or obese. That's more than 60% of all U.S. adults.
Okay, so that was actually the opening to the first movie, and the numbers have gotten worse from there. There's a basic issue of fairness here. It used to be that the poorest among us ate food they grew on the farm. You only got to eat what you grew. Now it's the richest, and only the richest, who can afford to buy organic at Whole Foods. Working class Americans right now have the least choices when it comes to eating. It is now far cheaper to buy instant mashed potatoes with ingredients you cannot pronounce than potatoes, milk, and butter to make actual mashed potatoes. And this is all part of the culture war, the war on fast food. If only we are told poor Americans wouldn't eat McDonald's, then they wouldn't be obese. It's their fault. Well, guess what? Working class America doesn't have a choice. Grocery stores are gone. They've left America's inner city because of theft and violence, leaving those in America's cities and rural towns with poor choices. The New York Times is right. They lost the war on fast food, but it was not necessarily by choice. Here's Chris from New York.